What's up YouTube, my name is Sam and today I'm going to give you the ultimate guide to getting started with DIY perfumery. So the idea of this video is to act as a central directory. If you want to know how to make perfume and you want to start doing DIY perfumery at home, this video is going to give you all of the key steps and it's going to give you links to other videos that I've made about each of these steps in more details, and I'm also going to put any links to any products in the description, so if you need to buy any equipment, for example, you can see where to buy it. I've also added some timestamps to this video, so if you only are interested in a certain section or you want to be able to come back to it, you can easily find all the information. Now, this video has four main sections. Firstly, it's going to be which equipment you need, and more specifically, how much it's going to cost. I'm going to give you a high budget option and a low budget option, so depending what budget you're working to, you can see how best to make use of the cash you're going to spend. Secondly, I'm going to give you a list of what I think are the 20 most important ingredients, so you can get started and do a lot with those ingredients without having to buy any more for the time being. Thirdly, I'm going to tell you how do you dilute and learn the ingredients once you've got them, because this is a key step in learning to make the perfume. Before you can mix things together, you have to understand how the ingredients work on their own. And finally, I'm going to talk about blending. So how do you go from these individual ingredients and how do you start mixing them together to the various stages of actually making a final perfume? So let's get into it. Firstly, for the equipment. So there is going to be a high budget option and a low budget option. So depending on how much you want to spend, you're going to be able to work out what is the most important things for you to buy. And once again, I've put all of the links in the description for you to find these things on Amazon. However, you can of course find them on other websites such as eBay or just generally looking around the internet. So I have already done a video on equipment and I will leave a link to that video. The most important thing is the scale you use. I like to use a scale with accuracy going to 0.001 grams, and I explained in the other video why I like to do that. However, the problem with it is these scales are quite expensive. These are proper lab scales and they can be upwards of £150. So for the high budget option, I would actually recommend you get one of these scales, as it is probably the most important investment you will make. However, I cannot ignore the fact that on Amazon, you can get a cheap scale for less than £10 that does claim to weigh to 0.01 grams of accuracy, which is only 10 times less. Next up, you are going to need some scent strips. You can buy these online in packs of 100. They're generally quite cheap. It usually costs around £3 or so per pack. I would recommend you get 5 packs, so you get 500 scent strips. This is going to be enough to last you a long time for both evaluating all of your raw materials and any blends or perfumes that you make. The next consumable item that you're going to have to buy is pipettes. Again, I would recommend buying 500 of these. I would recommend buying them like this in bulk so you save on cost overall. I know that some people are going to complain that pipettes are single use, and wouldn't it be better just to buy something that you can use again and again, like a dropper bottle? But the reality is 500 pipettes are going to last you a very long time and they are very cheap. And it just saves you a lot of hassle with having to worry about things getting cross-contaminated in the future. As well as the pipettes, you're going to need some sample bottles. These are used firstly for making your dilutions of the raw materials, and secondly for making your blends. The ones that I use are around 10 milliliters and it costs £27.49 for a pack of 100. So again, not too expensive. That makes them about 27.5p each. Next, you're going to need some perfumer's alcohol. This is going to be used to dilute your materials and also to dilute your final perfume. If you're on the lower budget, I would recommend you start off with 500 milliliters or half a litre of perfume's alcohol, which you can get for £16.99. If, on the other hand, you're on the higher budget, you might as well buy a bit more, so maybe a litre, as it's going to last you a bit longer until you have to go and buy another bottle. Another thing that's commonly overlooked is labels. This is really important because if you don't label your materials and your samples, you're going to forget what's inside each bottle, which effectively makes it useless. Now, hopefully you already have some labels lying around the house. However, if not, it's quite cheap just to pick up a pack of labels online. One final thing I would recommend is actually picking up a book on perfumery to help give you some ideas on what you should be doing. This isn't entirely necessary, so I will only add it to the higher budget. However, I would definitely recommend picking up the book called Perfume, The Alchemy of Scent by Jean-Claude Lena. I've done a review about this book on my channel, so if you're interested to know what it contains, then feel free to watch that video. So to summarize, comparing with the minimal and the maximal spend, If you buy all of the cheapest options that I've given above, it will come to £82.56. If, on the other hand, you want to go for the high budget option, it's going to cost you £255.85p. Now, most of this is because of the higher cost of the high accuracy scale. So if you're in the middle, you could just not buy the high accuracy scale and buy everything else that I've said. So that is the equipment covered. Now we're going to move on to the ingredients. So I'm going to recommend a set of 20 ingredients to begin with. I think 20 is a good number because 20 is enough to stay interested, but it's not so many that you're going to get confused. It's also not so many that it's going to get too expensive. When coming up with the list of ingredients, I kept the following criteria in mind. So firstly, I wanted to have ingredients which are commonly used and there's quite a lot of information about on the internet. Secondly, I wanted to have ingredients which are easy to use. So even if you're a beginner, you might be able to find a way of using them well in a perfume rather than having them and having no idea how to make them smell good when you blend them with everything else. Thirdly, I wanted to stick to ingredients which were cheap where possible and not things which were stupidly expensive. Fourthly, I wanted to minimize the number of potential allergens in the ingredients. This can be difficult sometimes with the naturals, but overall, this palette doesn't have very many allergenic ingredients in it. Fifthly, I wanted to give a mixture of synthetics and naturals. The reason for this is because synthetics can often be quite clean and simple and give you very beautiful single note effects, whereas naturals often can be very complex and they can also be more difficult to use. It really depends on the case, but it's nice to have a blend because you get a wide range of things to try out. And lastly, I tried to have a mixture of top, mid, and base notes. So top notes are the notes which are not going to last very long. They evaporate straight away. The mid notes are going to last a medium amount of time and the base notes are going to last for a very long time. So these are the only things that stick around on your skin after hours and hours of wearing a perfume. So here then is my list of what I would recommend you buy as your first 20 ingredients. I've drawn it out as a table, which is split up into naturals and synthetics. There's also one pre-made base, which I'll get to in a minute. So natural materials have been extracted from plants. This could be many different parts of the plant. For example, vetiver is extracted from the root, lavender is extracted from the flower heads, cedarwood is extracted from the wood. There are different ways of doing extractions. So for example, an essential oil, which is denoted EO, is made by doing a steam distillation of the plant material. There are other ways of doing extractions, however. For example, labdanum is commonly sold as an absolute, which is a type of solvent extraction. Synthetics are materials which have been made in a lab by chemists. For example, this is similar to how paracetamol or ibuprofen might be made in a lab for general use. For top, mid, and base notes, well, top notes are the notes of the perfume which evaporate the quickest, so these are the ones which shout loudly at you when you open the bottle, but they go quite quickly. Mid notes are the notes of a perfume which stick around for a medium length of time, so probably something like 1 to 2 hours. Base notes are the most long-lasting notes in the perfume. These are the notes that last till the very end. However, they can often be more subtle and they can also often be drowned out by the top and the mid notes at the very beginning of the perfume. So why then have I chosen these ingredients to recommend for a beginner? Well, the sweet orange and the lemon essential oils are both very easy to use and will impart a positive effect on almost any blend. The bergamot, on the other hand, is not something that is so recognizable to someone who's not smelled bergamot before. However, it is in fact one of the most widely used materials in perfumery. It is used everywhere. The reason I recommend getting bergamot BF or bergaterpene free is because natural bergamot can contain these things called bergaterpenes, and when they go on your skin, they can react with some sunlight to make a sensitization. So if you get bergamot with the bergaterpenes removed, it's much safer for use on the skin. Now for the synthetic top notes, there are many synthetic top notes which smell really nice. However, for the purposes of this video, I had to pick something that would be useful and versatile in a lot of situations. Cis-3-hexanol is the smell of freshly cut grass. However, the reason that it's so useful is because as well as making your perfume smell like that, if you want it to, it's also very useful in very low doses in floral and fruity accords in order to make it smell a bit more natural and realistic. Next, for the natural mid-notes, I picked lavender and cedarwood. Lavender is great because it's used in fougères, which is a classic type of accord, and also colognes, which is a classical family of perfume. Now, the thing about lavender is it's widely used to soften out fragrances, and you can often find a place for it. Cedarwood, on the other hand, is a quintessential woody note. It smells just like pencil shavings and is an essential component for woody accords. It acts as a great backbone for any kind of woody accord that you might want to make. Next, for the synthetic mid-notes, the first one I would recommend is hedione. This is one of the most widely used materials in all of perfumery and is a very famous mid-note. When you try to smell it on its own, it doesn't actually smell of very much, but it has an incredible impact on many, many blends, which is why it's so widely used. The next material is ethyl maltol. This is found in lots of fruits, and it also allows you to build a candy floss style or sugary accords. So again, this can be very versatile. Beta-ionone, this is something that smells like violets and also smells like raspberry, so it can be used as a base for both of those accords. And finally, fructone. This again is found in a lot of fruits, so it helps you build fruit accords. It's useful for berry accords, for example, raspberry or strawberry, and also things like apples. Finally, for the mid-notes, this is the one time that I'm actually going to recommend you get a base, which is Givaudan's Rose base, called Rose Givco 217. The reason I recommend getting a rose base over the natural rose is that the rose base is a lot more consistent. This is because naturals can vary depending on their location and which manufacturer made them. An even bigger reason, however, is that the rose base is much, much cheaper than the natural rose. So for a beginner, this is a great choice to have. Now for the natural base notes. I'm going to recommend labdanum and benzoin. These can both be used in a lot of contexts. However, they can also both be used to make an amber accord, which is something you can do as a beginner. Then the vetiver and the patchouli. Vetiver is quite a woody scent, so this should blend well with your cedarwood. However, you can also use it in combination with all of the other three natural base notes quite well. Patchouli, on the other hand, is quite polarizing. However, it is one of the core base notes for natural perfumery, and it is great to know what this smells like and learn how to use it. And finally, for the synthetic base notes. So firstly, I'm going to recommend two musks. These are ethylene brassylate and exaltalide. These are both going to last a very long time and will help provide a solid base for your perfume that is quite transparent. The ethylene brassylate is more of a sweet musk, whereas the exaltalide is more of a fabric-like musk. And finally, three very important ingredients: vanillin, ambroxan, and isoe super. Natural vanilla is a very complex scent. However, the main scent molecule in natural vanilla is vanillin. So vanillin is something that smells characteristically vanilla. This can be used in combination with the ethyl maltol to make a candy floss accord. However, it can also be used with the labdanum and the benzoin to make an amber accord. Ambroxan can also be used to make an amber accord. However, it can be used for so much more than that as well. Ambroxan gives you an intensely kind of golden, clean effect to your perfume, and it will make your perfume smell a lot more like a professional perfume rather than a homemade perfume. It is used all over the place and is an indispensable ingredient. Isoe super is another quite famous ingredient. You may have heard about this if you're interested in perfumery. It is quite a woody ingredient, and it's a very warm, hugging ingredient. This can be used in great combination with all of the other base notes here, especially the woody base notes and the musks, and it can really be used in a large variety of perfumes to give a warm, enveloping effect. Once you smell the Isoe super, you will also start to smell it in lots of perfumes you find in the shops. For the ingredients I've just talked about, the total cost came to £171 plus £7 for postage and packaging. I'm not going to do a high budget or low budget option for the ingredients because I think that this is a good set. So I wouldn't want to change my thought on what would be a good setting of ingredients just based on the budget. That said, if there is one or two things that are too expensive, then sure, you could always just drop those out and look to get them another time. Another thing you've got to bear in mind is the supplier. There are different suppliers that you can use, though you sometimes will have to do a little bit of searching on the internet in order to find them. I use Pearl Wall, which is why I'm recommending it here. However, I'm not affiliated with them in any means, and you could definitely use another supplier if you are in the UK. If you're in the US, Perfumer's Apprentice are a good supplier, and I've also heard good things about creatingperfume.com. Okay, now it's time for stage 3. So now we've got our equipment and we've got our ingredients. Now we want to actually start doing things with them. So the first stage is to learn the ingredients. Before we're going to do any blending or make anything with them, you just want to learn the ingredients so you understand them properly. The reason for this is if you're going to make a complex mixture out of things, you at least want to know what they're like on their own. It's kind of like cooking. You wouldn't want to start cooking with a load of ingredients you've never used before without knowing what they taste like on their own, because otherwise your meal could easily end up just tasting disgusting. So the first step in learning your ingredients is by making dilutions. The reason you want to make dilutions is because you can understand how the ingredient behaves at different concentrations, and this means you get to know what it's going to smell like at the different levels you might want to use it in the perfume. In order to make a dilution, you need to perform the following steps. Firstly, you want to take one of your sample bottles and you want to place it on your scale and then set the scale to 0. Next, take a pipette, get some of your ingredient, and you want to measure out something like 0.5 grams. You could have any number you wanted to, but I would recommend starting out with half a gram. Put that in the bottle, so make sure the scale reads 0.5 grams. Next, you want to times this number by 9. So if you've picked 0.5, 0.5 times 9 is 4.5. Now, what you want to do is get a new pipette, go to your perfumer's alcohol, and you want to take 4.5 grams of perfumer's alcohol and add it into the sample vial with the ingredient. So what you've done here is you've added 0.5 grams of ingredient, 4.5 grams of perfumer's alcohol, that adds up to 5 grams total. So what you've done now is you've got a 10% dilution of your ingredient in the perfumer's alcohol. Now you just want to label this bottle as ingredient name 10%, and this bottle here is your first 10% dilution. Now the 10% dilution is great because this allows you to smell and evaluate the material and learn what it smells like much better than when you have it in its pure form. Sometimes when the ingredient's in its pure form, it can actually overload your nose and stop you smelling it properly, but a 10% is usually a good amount. So what do you want to do next? Well, I've made a video about how to evaluate materials. However, in short, you firstly want to give your nose a chance to rest after making the dilution, and then all you need to do is take one of the scent strips and dip it in your 10% dilution, leave it for a minute or so, and then you can smell it and you'll unlock what the ingredient smells like. Then you can make a proper evaluation on it. Once you've got your 10% dilution and you know what it smells like, you can repeat this process to make a 1% dilution. So once again, you take your 10% dilution, you put 0.5 grams of that into a new bottle, you then take a new pipette, you take another 4.5 grams of the perfumer's alcohol, and then you add that to the bottle, and so now you've diluted that to 1%, you put a label on it saying material X, 1%, and again, repeat the same process. What you'll find, of course, is the 1% is much weaker than the 10%, but this effect can vary with different materials. So for some materials, they're so powerful that even the 1% dilution is very strong. It's really important to learn this because that will allow you to know when you're making it into a perfume, you might not want to add a drop of the pure ingredient, for example. You may only want to add a drop of your 1% dilution because even then, it still has a chance potentially of overpowering the perfume. Okay, so if you're following with me at this point, you've used up 40 of your 100 sample bottles and you've used up 40 of your 500 pipettes, plus one for the perfume's alcohol, which is one that I like to reuse. I think you can reuse the pipette for the perfume's alcohol as long as you make sure that it never gets contaminated with anything else. If it gets contaminated, always throw it out and use a new pipette. At this stage, you should have 60 sample bottles left, and these are going to be used for making your blends. This is where the real perfuming starts happening. So I like to split blending up into 3 distinct stages. Firstly is making binary mixtures, secondly is making accords, and thirdly is making final perfumes. So what are these different stages and how do you do them? Firstly then, what are binary mixtures? Well, binary mixtures are a way to assess the compatibility between 2 ingredients. So when you've got 2 ingredients, what you can do is you can take 2 scent strips, you can dip those in the 2 bottles, and then you can hold them next to each other, and you can use that to see what the 2 ingredients will smell like. Once you've found a combination that you think smells well together, at this stage you can work out which actual fine levels you want to use in the blend, or how they might fit together when you're using them later on. So what you want to do is you want to take one ingredient, and then you want to take another one, I would start off by diluting something like 0.5 grams of each, mix them together in a sample bottle using separate pipettes for each, of course. And then, just like the evaluations before, after some time, you take a scent strip and you dip that into your mixture of the two things, and then you work out, is one of them too strong, is the other one too strong, or are they perfectly balanced? If they're perfectly balanced, then that's great, but if not, this gives you a chance to make another trial. So if they're not balanced, you can use more of one material and less of the other, or alternatively, you can use a lower dilution level of one. So for example, if material A is much stronger in the mixture than material B, then what I could do is use the 1% dilution of material A, and then I could mix that equally with the 10% dilution of material B. The final mixture, in this case, material A will still be 10 times weaker than material B in the final mixture. Now for step 2. Step 2 is making accords. Accords are just more complex mixtures than the binary mixtures. Generally with an accord, you want to go in one of two directions. You either go for a realistic accord or an abstract accord. When you're making a realistic accord, you try to make it smell like something that exists. So for example, if you take the ethyl maltol and the vanillin, which I recommended in those ingredients, when you mix those together, you find you get a candy floss kind of smell. You can use accords to make things like fruit smells or floral smells when you can't obtain a natural or an essential oil or something to get the smell. For example, apple doesn't have an essential oil, but you can make an apple accord. So that's how you get the smell of apple in your perfumes. Secondly is the abstract accords. When you're making an abstract accord, you're essentially doing what you were doing with the binary mixtures. You're letting the ingredients speak to you and tell you how they want to be blended together. So if you find a number of binary compositions that go well, you can mix them all together into a big accord of 5 things. Now it may not smell like anything particular, but if you think it smells nice, then that's fine, that's an accord. And finally, step 3. So step 3 is when you're now starting to make perfumes instead of simple accords. So perfumes and accords are both mixtures of things. What is the difference then of a perfume? To me, the difference for a perfume is when you're constructing a perfume, you start to think how it is going to evolve over time. When you make an accord, for example, it may be something that is a top note accord or a mid note accord or something else, but you're generally thinking about more the smell and the impression you get rather than how it's going to affect the skin or how it's going to last on the skin over time. On the other hand, when you're making a perfume, you want to think, what does it smell like when I open the bottle? What does it smell like once it's on my skin? And what does it smell like after hours and hours? So this case is when you're going to have to be thinking about your mid notes, your base notes, and your top notes. Do I have some top note accords mixed with some base note naturals, for example, and some base note synthetics? Or do I have some base note accords mixed with some top note synthetics? Who knows? Any combination is possible, but the idea is this is what you're thinking. You're bringing the scents that you like, or the smells you've made that you like, and you're making them functional and work as an actual perfume. The best way to test these is generally to put them on a scent strip and study them over days. You will have to think about what they smell like straight away and what they smell like after a day or so. Another thing you can do is put them on your skin. When you put things on the skin, they can react with your skin chemistry and start to smell different. So this will really help you work out how it's going to actually function as a perfume. So that's it in a nutshell. Obviously, you could go into each one of these topics as much as you want. I've tried to link other videos where I can. However, this is a basic overview, and I think this should tell you all you need to get started. So thank you for watching the video. Please give me a like or a subscribe, and also remember to comment what other videos you would like to see about making perfume, and I'll see what I can do in the future. So enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.